A millionaire hired a single mother to look after his wheelchair-bound twins. She accepted the challenge, but carried a dark secret that no one knew about. Her past threatens to break the fragile peace of that silent mansion. What do you think? She was hiding. Watch to the end. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like this video and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. Sarah Martinez stared at the newspaper advertisement for what felt like the 100th time that morning, her coffee growing cold beside her. The salary listed made her breath catch. It was triple what she currently made as a nurse at the local clinic. The position seemed almost too good to be true. Live-in caregiver for twin girls in the prestigious Highland district, all expenses paid, private quarters included. She glanced at the clock, 6:45 a.m. Her daughter Emma would be up soon, getting ready for her last day of junior year. The thought of telling her about this potential change made Sarah's stomach twist. They'd never lived anywhere but this modest two-bedroom apartment, their safe haven for the past 16 years. The morning sunlight filtered through the worn curtains, casting a warm glow over the cramped living room. Every corner held memories: Emma's first steps by the coffee table, homework sessions on the worn couch, late-night conversations over hot chocolate. But memories didn't pay bills, and lately, making ends meet had become increasingly difficult. Soft knock on her bedroom door interrupted her thoughts. "Mom, you're up early again." Emma stood in the doorway, already dressed in her favorite jeans and oversized sweater, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. At 16, she was the spitting image of Sarah at that age, except for her eyes. Those were all her father's, though Emma would never know that truth. "Just looking at job opportunities," Sarah replied, quickly folding the newspaper. But Emma, ever observant, had already spotted it. "The Highland District posting? Mom, that's where all the millionaires live." Emma crossed the room, picking up the paper. "Live-in caregiver. Wait, you're actually considering this?" Sarah took a deep breath. "The pay is incredible, Emma, and they're offering private quarters. We could both live there." "Both of us? Leave our home?" Emma's voice wavered slightly, but Sarah could see the wheels turning in her daughter's mind. "Tell me more about it." Sarah explained what little she knew. Twin girls, 10 years old, both requiring special care. The father was some kind of business executive, recently widowed. The advertisement emphasized discretion and professionalism, with experience in pediatric care being essential. "But what about your job at the clinic and my school?" Emma asked, settling into the chair across from her mother. "The Highland District is still in your school zone, honey. You wouldn't have to transfer. And as for the clinic..." Sarah paused, thinking of her cramped office and the endless overtime she worked to make ends meet. "Sometimes we need to take chances for a better life." Emma was quiet for a moment, studying the advertisement. When she looked up, there was a determination in her eyes that made Sarah's heart swell with pride. "You should apply, Mom. You're amazing with kids, and we could use a change. Besides," she added with a small smile, "I've always wondered what it would be like to live in a mansion." Sarah reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. "You're sure? This would be a big change for both of us." "I'm sure, and hey, who knows? Maybe this is the universe giving us our chance at a fresh start." Emma's optimism was contagious, and Sarah felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. The phone call she made later that morning was answered by a crisp, professional voice belonging to someone named Victoria Pierce, the family's personal assistant. The interview was scheduled for the following day at 2 p.m. sharp. That evening, as Sarah stood in front of her closet deciding what to wear, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Behind her, pinned to the wall, was the only photo she kept of Emma's father, though Emma believed it was her uncle. The man in the photo smiled back at her, his charm masking the darkness she'd discovered too late. Sarah quickly turned away, pushing down the memories threatening to surface. Tomorrow would be about new beginnings, not old wounds. She pulled out her best blazer, the one she saved for special occasions, and laid it carefully on the bed. As she did so, her phone buzzed with a text from the clinic. Another emergency shift available if she wanted it. For the first time in years, Sarah declined the extra hours. Instead, she spent the evening with Emma, making plans and dreaming. about possibilities. They ordered pizza and sat on their small balcony, watching the sun set over the city skyline. In the distance, the mansions of the Highland District gleamed like promises of a better tomorrow. "Whatever happens," Emma said, resting her head on her mother's shoulder, "we've got each other." Sarah wrapped an arm around her daughter, silently praying that this opportunity wouldn't lead to her carefully constructed world unraveling. The weight of her secrets felt heavier than usual that night, but Emma's presence beside her was a reminder of why she'd made every choice, told every necessary lie. Sometimes, she told herself, protection came in the form of carefully crafted stories, in the spaces between truth and fiction, where safety resided. The Thorne mansion loomed before Sarah, its Georgian architecture both impressive and intimidating. She double-checked the address on her phone. Though there was no mistaking this place, it was exactly as grand as the rumors suggested. The wrought iron gates had opened automatically when she announced herself through the intercom, and now she stood at the base of a sweeping driveway, her sensible heels clicking against the cobblestones. Victoria Pierce, the assistant who had scheduled the interview, met her at the massive front door. She was younger than Sarah had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, dressed in an impeccable suit that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. "Mrs. Martinez, welcome to Thorne." "Manor?" Victoria said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "Please follow me." "Miss," Sarah corrected automatically, "but please call me Sarah." Victoria's eyebrow lifted slightly, but she made no comment as she led Sarah through the mansion's interior. The foyer opened into a grand hall with a sweeping staircase, the walls adorned with what looked like original artwork. Everything spoke of old money and refined taste, yet there was an emptiness to the space that Sarah couldn't quite place. They passed a music room where a baby grand piano sat silent, its surface gleaming in the afternoon light. From somewhere, upstairs came the faint sound of classical music and what might have been voices. "The girls are with their music teacher at the moment," Victoria explained, leading Sarah into a study that seemed designed to overwhelm. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, while the 4th featured large windows overlooking manicured gardens. "Please, have a seat." Sarah perched on the edge of a leather armchair, trying not to feel like an imposter in this world of wealth and privilege. Victoria settled behind a massive desk, pulling out a tablet and what looked like a thick file. "Your credentials are impressive," Victoria began, "particularly your experience in pediatric care. However, this position requires unique qualities beyond medical expertise." "I understand," Sarah replied, though she wasn't sure she did. The advertisement had been vague about the specific needs of the children. "The girls, Lily and Rose, are 10 years old. They have certain physical limitations that require constant care and attention, but their challenges aren't purely physical." Victoria paused, studying Sarah carefully. "We've had 5 caregivers in the past year. None lasted more than 2 months." Sarah felt her professional interest peak. "May I ask why?" "The girls can be difficult. They've experienced significant trauma and they don't trust easily." Victoria's professional demeanor cracked slightly, showing genuine concern. "Their mother's passing 3 years ago changed everything. Mr. Thorne does his best, but—" A door slammed somewhere in the house, followed by raised voices. Victoria tensed, but before she could react, the study door burst open. A girl in a wheelchair powered into the room, her face flushed with anger. She couldn't have been more than 10, but the fury in her eyes aged her. "I won't do it anymore," she declared, wheeling herself between Sarah and Victoria. "I won't pretend to care about scales and arpeggios when they don't matter." "Lily," Victoria started, but the girl cut her off. "Another one?" Lily's attention switched to Sarah, her expression darkening. "How long will you last? A week, a month? Want to place bets?" Sarah met the girl's gaze steadily. "I don't believe in betting on people's commitments, but I do believe in being honest, so let me be clear. I don't give up easily, especially not on children who are hurting." Lily's wheelchair moved closer, and Sarah could see the sophisticated controls built into the armrest. "Everyone says that at first, then they learn about the nightmares, the screaming, the days when we won't speak to anyone. They realize that no amount of money is worth the trouble. Lily, that's enough, Victoria interjected, but Sarah held up a hand. May I? She asked, and when Victoria nodded, Sarah leaned forward to address Lily directly. You're right. Everyone probably does say that at first, and I can't prove to you right. Now that I'm different. But I can tell you this, I'm a single mother. I've raised my daughter alone for 16 years. I know what it's like to face challenges that seem impossible. I know what it's like when people walk away because things get too hard. Something flickered in Lily's eyes. Interest, perhaps, or recognition. You have a daughter? I do. Her name is Emma. She's 16, and she's the strongest person I know. Sarah smiled softly. If I get this position, she'll be coming to live here too. She's actually excited about the possibility of meeting you and your sister. For a moment, Lily seemed to forget her anger. She would live here too. Yes. If that's allowed, Sarah glanced at Victoria, who nodded. That was actually one of the reasons your application stood out, Victoria admitted. Mr. Thorne thought having another young person in the house might be beneficial. Lily's wheelchair hummed as she backed away slightly. Does she play any instruments? Piano, actually. She's been taking lessons since she was 6. A complicated series of emotions crossed Lily's face. Without another word, she turned her wheelchair and left the room as suddenly as she had entered, leaving behind a charged silence. Victoria let out a breath. Well, that was unexpected. Lily rarely engages with potential caregivers at all. Usually, she just ignores them completely. Sarah's mind was already working, processing what she'd observed. The sophisticated wheelchair, the girl's articulate speech, the apparent interest in music. There was so much potential there, trapped behind walls of pain and distrust. Tell me more about the position, Sarah said, her determination growing. I want to understand exactly what I'd be walking into. As Victoria began outlining the details, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the edge of something life-changing. She thought of Emma, of their small apartment, of all the secrets she kept to protect their quiet life. She thought of Lily's fierce eyes and the music room with its silent piano. Sometimes, she realized, the biggest risks led to the most important rewards. The rest of the interview passed in a blur of paperwork and detailed explanations. Victoria outlined the schedule, the salary, which was even more generous than advertised, and the extensive medical procedures Sarah would need to learn. But Sarah's mind kept drifting back to Lily's fierce presence, wondering about the other twin Rose who remained unseen. Mr. Thorne would like to meet you personally, Victoria announced, checking her phone. He's just finished a video conference. If you have time. Sarah glanced at her watch. Emma wouldn't be home from school for hours. Of course. They ascended the grand staircase, their footsteps muffled by thick carpeting. The second floor revealed a different side of the mansion. While still elegant, there were signs of life here. A book left open on a window seat, a colorful painting clearly done by a child, specialized exercise equipment adapted for wheelchair users. Victoria led her to a large office at the end of the hall. The door was open, revealing a man standing at the windows, his back to them. Even from behind, Alexander Thorne cut an impressive figure. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair slightly silver at the temples. Mr. Thorne? Sarah Martinez is here. He turned, and Sarah felt her breath catch. His face was handsome, but haunted, deep lines etched around his eyes, speaking of sleepless nights and heavy burdens. When he smiled, it didn't quite reach his eyes. Miss Martinez, thank you for coming. His voice was deep, cultured. He gestured to a sitting area near a fireplace. Victoria, could you check on the girls? I believe their music lesson should be finishing. Once they were alone, Alexander Thorne's professional demeanor shifted slightly. He seemed less the powerful executive and more a troubled father. I understand you met Lily earlier. Yes, briefly. Sarah settled into a comfortable armchair. She seems like a remarkably intelligent young lady. She is. Both girls are brilliant, in their own ways. He paused, running a hand through his hair. Rose is quieter. She hasn't spoken more than a few words since her mother. His voice trailed off. Victoria mentioned there have been several caregivers, Sarah prompted gently. Alexander's expression darkened. They weren't prepared for the reality of the situation. The girls need more than just physical care. They need... He stood abruptly, walking to a shelf where a silver frame sat. He brought it to Sarah. The photograph showed a stunning woman with auburn hair, surrounded by laughing children. The twins sat in their wheelchairs, but their faces were bright with joy. Alexander stood behind them all, his smile genuine and warm. They looked like a perfect family. This was taken 6 months before. The accident, he said quietly. Caroline was... She was everything to them. To all of us. After we lost her, I threw myself into work. I told myself I was doing it for the girls, building a legacy, funding research for their condition. But the truth is, I was running away. Sarah studied the photograph, noting how different the girls looked from the angry child she'd met earlier. They lost their mother, and in many ways their father too. He flinched but didn't deny it. I've been trying to make up for it. I've hired the best doctors, therapists, music teachers, but nothing seems to help. They're slipping away and I don't know how to reach them. Setting down the photograph, Sarah leaned forward. Mr. Thorne, may I be direct? He nodded, seeming relieved at her forthright approach. Your daughters don't need more doctors or therapists right now. They need stability, consistency, and, most importantly, they need to know they won't be abandoned again, by anyone. She met his gaze steadily. If I take this position, I need to know you're committed to being present in their lives. Real change will require all of us working together. Alexander studied her for a long moment. Then, reaching for a remote, he turned on a large screen mounted on the wall. I want to show you something. The video that played was clearly from a security camera. It showed the music room, where a young woman sat with the twins at the piano. Rose sat silently, while Lily argued with the teacher. Suddenly, Rose's hands moved to the keys, playing a haunting melody. Lily fell silent, and for a brief moment both girls seemed at peace. That was last week, Alexander said softly. It's the first time Rose has touched the piano since we lost their mother. Caroline was a concert pianist, you see. Music was their special connection. Sarah watched as the moment on screen shattered. Lily wheeled away from the piano, shouting something inaudible, while Rose's hands fell limply to her lap. I'm showing you this because I want you to understand what you're walking into, Alexander continued. These moments of breakthrough are rare and fragile. The girls need someone who won't give up when things get difficult, someone who understands that healing isn't linear. Sarah thought of Emma, of all the challenges they'd faced together, of the secrets she kept to protect their peace. Mr. Thorne, my daughter and I know something about rebuilding after loss. We know about starting over, about finding strength in unexpected places. He turned off the screen, facing her fully. Victoria mentioned you're a single mother. The father passed away, Sarah said smoothly, the familiar lie tasting bitter on her tongue. Emma was just a baby. We've been on our own ever since. Alexander nodded slowly. The position is yours if you want it. You can move in this weekend. We'll have the guest house prepared for you and your daughter. Take tonight to discuss it with her, but I need your answer by tomorrow morning. As Sarah stood to leave, he added, One more thing, Miss Martinez. The girls, they have a way of discovering people's secrets. They're unusually perceptive. If there's anything in your past that might complicate this arrangement, now would be the time to share it. Sarah met his gaze, her heart pounding, but her voice steady. Mr. Thorne, my only priority is providing the best possible care for your daughters, while ensuring a stable future for my own. You have my word on that. He seemed satisfied with her answer, but as Sarah followed Victoria back downstairs, she couldn't shake the weight of his words. The girls had a way of discovering secrets. She thought of the carefully constructed story of Emma's father, of the newspaper clippings hidden in a locked box under her bed, of the burner phone she kept, charged but never used. Some secrets, she told herself, were necessary. Some lies protected more than truth ever could. Emma was waiting at their favorite cafe when Sarah arrived, homework spread across the small table, a half-empty smoothie beside her textbooks. Her face lit up at the sight of her mother, then quickly turned serious as she registered Sarah's expression. "So, how did it go?" Emma asked, clearing space as Sarah sank into the chair across from her. Sarah ordered a coffee before answering, gathering her thoughts. "They offered me the position," she finally said, watching her daughter's reaction carefully. Emma's eyes widened. "Really? Just like that?" "Not exactly just like that." Sarah described the mansion, the interview with Victoria, and her meeting with Alexander Thorne. She told Emma about Lily's dramatic entrance and Rose's absence, about the sophisticated wheelchairs and the silent music room. "The guest house is bigger than our apartment," Sarah added, stirring her coffee. "You'd have your own room with a view of the gardens. There's even a small music room where you could practice piano." Emma was quiet for a moment, processing everything. "The twins, what exactly happened to them? Why are they in wheelchairs?" "They were born with a congenital condition," Sarah explained. "But their physical challenges aren't the main issue. They lost their mother 3 years ago, and they're struggling to cope. The father, he's trying, but he's been distant. They've had multiple caregivers who've given up on them." "But you won't," Emma stated with absolute certainty. "You never give up on anyone." Sarah reached across the table, squeezing her daughter's hand. "This would be a big change for us, honey. New home, new environment, new challenges. I need to know you're really okay with this." Emma closed her textbook, leaning forward. "Mom, do you remember last year when I was struggling with math? How you worked extra shifts to pay for a tutor, even though it meant we barely saw each other? You've always put me first, done everything to give me opportunities. Maybe it's time for both of us to have an opportunity." Sarah felt tears threatening and blinked them back. Sometimes her daughter's maturity took her breath away. "There's something else you should know. Mr. Thorne mentioned that the girls are very perceptive. They have a way of discovering things about people." Emma's expression shifted slightly. "You're worried they might ask about Dad?" "Yes." Sarah's heart ached at the familiar shadow that crossed her daughter's face whenever they discussed her father. The carefully constructed story of his passing had protected Emma for 16 years, but in this new environment, with 2 observant children and their equally perceptive father. "Mom, we've been through this," Emma said gently. "I know talking about Dad is hard for you, but I've made peace with what happened. The accident, losing him so young, it's sad, but it's part of our story. You've given me enough love for 2 parents." Each word was like a knife in Sarah's heart. The accident that supposedly took Emma's father was a fiction, crafted to protect her from the brutal truth that her father was a man who had chosen crime over family, who had threatened their safety when Sarah refused to be part of his schemes. The newspaper clippings in her locked box told the real story, of arrests, of violence, of a man who had never been the person she thought she loved. "You're right," Sarah managed, forcing a smile. "I just worry sometimes. Mother's prerogative." "Well, stop worrying," Emma declared. "This is going to be amazing. I can help with the twins. Maybe teach them some piano if they're interested. And you'll be doing what you do best, helping people heal." As they finished their drinks and gathered Emma's books, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Mr. Thorne would like your decision by 9 a.m. tomorrow. The guest house can be ready by Saturday if you accept." Emma read the message over her shoulder and grinned. "Should I start packing?" Sarah looked at her daughter's excited face, then thought of the twins in their wheelchairs, of Alexander Thorne's haunted eyes, of the silent piano waiting to be played again. Perhaps this was more than just an opportunity. Perhaps it was a chance for all of them to heal, to start fresh. "Yes," she said finally, sending a quick reply to Victoria. "Yes, start packing." As they walked home in the gathering dusk, Emma chattering about what she wanted to bring and how she'd arrange her new room, Sarah sent up a silent prayer that her past would stay buried, that the lies she'd told to protect. Her daughter wouldn't unravel in this new chapter of their lives. But deep down she knew secrets had a way of surfacing, especially in houses built on pain and loss. The question wasn't if the truth would come out, but when, and what it would cost them all when it did. Moving day arrived with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Sarah and Emma stood in their empty apartment, surrounded by labeled boxes and 16 years of memories. The morning light streamed through the bare windows, making the space seem larger and somehow more hollow. "It feels strange," Emma said, running her hand along the wall where her height measurements were marked. "Like we're leaving part of ourselves behind." Sarah understood exactly what her daughter meant. Every scratch on the floor, every dent in the walls told a story. Emma's first steps, impromptu dance parties, late-night comfort sessions after nightmares. This apartment had been their fortress, their safe haven when the world seemed too big and scary. "We're not leaving ourselves behind," Sarah replied, wrapping an arm around Emma's shoulders. "We're just adding new chapters to our story." The moving company Mr. Thorne had insisted on sending arrived precisely on schedule. Sarah watched as professional movers carefully wrapped their modest furniture, treating their well-worn possessions with unexpected reverence. It was surreal to see their life packed away in neat labeled boxes. As the last box was carried out, Sarah did one final sweep of the apartment. In her bedroom closet, she knelt and pried up the loose floorboard, where she kept her most carefully guarded possessions, a metal box containing newspaper clippings, legal documents, and the burner phone she had never been able to discard. For a moment she considered leaving it all behind, burying the past once and for all. Instead, she tucked the box into her large purse. Some things were too dangerous to abandon, even if you wanted to. The drive to Highland District took less than 30 minutes, but it felt like crossing into another world. The guest house, as Alexander had called it, was larger than their apartment and exquisitely furnished. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked manicured gardens, and a brand new piano gleamed in the corner of the living room. "Mom!" Emma called from upstairs. "You have to see this." Sarah followed her daughter's voice to find her standing in a bedroom that looked like it had been pulled from a luxury magazine. A window seat offered views of the rose garden, and built-in, bookshelves lined one wall. But what caught Sarah's attention was the easel set up near the window, complete with a full set of art supplies. "Mr. Thorne mentioned you like to draw," Victoria said from the doorway, making them both jump. "We thought you might appreciate a proper studio space." Emma's face lit up. "This is incredible, thank you." Victoria smiled, the first genuine expression Sarah had seen from her. "The twins' rooms are in the east wing of the main house. They have art therapy on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Perhaps you'd like to join them sometime." Before Emma could respond, a commotion outside drew their attention. Through the window, they could see Lily in her wheelchair, arguing with what appeared to be a physical therapist. Rose sat nearby, her wheelchair positioned to face the garden, seemingly oblivious to her sister's outburst. "I should go," Sarah said, recognizing her cue. "Emma, will you be okay unpacking on your own?" "Go," Emma urged. "I've got this. Besides, I want to arrange everything just right." Sarah followed Victoria across the manicured lawn to where Lily's voice was rising in frustration. "I don't need more exercises. I need everyone to stop pretending things can get better." The physical therapist, a young man who looked close to tears, was trying to demonstrate some kind of stretching technique. Rose remained motionless, her gaze fixed on a butterfly dancing among the roses. "Perhaps we could take a break," Sarah suggested, stepping forward. The therapist shot her a grateful look before practically fleeing the scene. Lily's wheelchair spun to face her. "Oh great, you actually came. Ready to start your countdown to quitting?" "Actually, I was thinking about music," Sarah said calmly, noting how both girls tensed at the word. "My daughter Emma is unpacking her art supplies, but once she's done, she'll probably want to try out the new piano. She's been playing since she was 6, but she gets nervous performing for new people." Rose's head turned slightly, though she didn't look directly at Sarah. "We don't need another piano player," Lily declared, but there was less venom in her voice. "No, you don't," Sarah agreed. "But Emma could use some advice. She's in a new place, surrounded by new people. It's a bit overwhelming. Having someone to talk to, someone who understands music, it might help her feel less alone." Lily's expression flickered between suspicion and interest. What kind of music does she play? All kinds. Classical, contemporary. She especially loves composing her own pieces, though she rarely lets anyone hear them. Rose's wheelchair hummed, softly as she turned to face them fully, her movement so subtle it might have been accidental. But Sarah noticed how her hands, previously limp in her lap, now rested lightly on her armrests. "Our mother was a composer," Lily said, her voice catching slightly. "She wrote pieces for us, special ones that we could play even with our hands the way they are." Sarah nodded, remembering the video Alexander had shown her. "That sounds beautiful. Would you ever consider sharing those pieces with Emma? Not playing them," she added quickly, seeing Lily's face darken. "Just telling her about them. Sometimes talking about music can be as powerful as playing it." A long moment passed. Rose's head tilted slightly, like a bird listening to a distant song. Lily's fingers drummed on her wheelchair's control panel. "Maybe," Lily finally said, "if she's not annoying." Sarah suppressed a smile. "Fair enough. Now, I noticed you have some beautiful roses in this garden. Would you tell me about them? For the next hour?" Sarah listened as Lily reluctantly explained the different varieties of roses, her knowledge surprisingly extensive. Rose remained silent, but stayed with them, her wheelchair gradually moving closer as Lily spoke. When Emma appeared at the guest house door testing the waters, Sarah caught a glimpse of curiosity in both twins' faces. It wasn't much, a tiny crack in their defensive walls, but it was a start. As the afternoon sun painted the garden in golden light, Sarah allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, they could all find healing in this new chapter. But later that night, as she unpacked the metal box and found its hiding place in her new home, Sarah was reminded that healing could only come with honesty, and some truths were too dangerous to share. The first week in the Thorne mansion established a rhythm that was both promising and precarious. Sarah learned the girls' medical routines, memorizing the intricate schedule of medications, exercises, and therapeutic activities. She discovered that Lily's outbursts often came just before her pain levels peaked, and that Rose's silence didn't mean she wasn't listening. Her expressive eyes followed every conversation, every movement. Emma, to Sarah's relief and amazement, proved to be a natural bridge between worlds. She spent her afternoons doing homework in the garden, where the twins could see her, occasionally humming or sketching. She never pushed for interaction, but her presence became a constant that the girls seemed to accept, then expect. It was during breakfast on their 6th day that the first real breakthrough occurred. Sarah was helping Rose with her specially adapted spoon when a familiar melody drifted through the open windows. Emma was at the guest house piano, practicing a piece she'd been working on for months. Rose's hand stilled, her breakfast forgotten. Lily, who had been sullenly pushing her food around her plate, lifted her head. "That's wrong," Lily announced suddenly. "The middle part, she's playing it wrong." Before Sarah could respond, Rose's wheelchair moved toward the window. It was the first independent movement she'd made during a meal since Sarah had arrived. "Would you like to go listen closer?" Sarah asked carefully. Rose nodded, a tiny movement, but unmistakable. They found Emma lost in her music, unaware of her audience. When she finished, Lily spoke up from the doorway. "The bridge section needs to be slower, you're rushing it." Emma started, then recovered with a smile. "You're right, I've been struggling with that part. Would you show me how it should sound?" Lily's wheelchair moved forward, then stopped. "I don't play anymore." "Could you explain it?" "Then. Sometimes hearing it described helps me understand better." Sarah watched in quiet amazement as Lily began to explain the proper tempo, her words precise and technical. Rose wheeled closer to the piano, her fingers moving slightly in her lap as Emma played the section again, following Lily's instructions. "Better," Lily conceded, "but still not perfect." "Nothing ever is," Emma replied with a shrug. "But that's what makes music interesting, right? There's always room to improve, to try something new." Rose's hand reached out, hovering over the keys without touching them. The room fell silent, heavy with possibility. "Mom." Emma's voice was casual, but Sarah could hear the careful consideration behind it. Could you help me with that new piece I've been working on? The one for four hands? Sarah moved to the piano, understanding her daughter's strategy. Together they began to play a simple duet, leaving obvious spaces where two more parts could join in. Minutes passed. Then, so slowly it seemed like a dream, Rose's fingers descended on the keys, filling in one of the empty spaces in the melody. Her touch was hesitant, but the notes were perfect. Lily watched her sister, emotions warring on her face. Then, with a sound that might have been frustration or might have been surrender, she joined in, her part completing the harmony. The music that filled the guest house wasn't perfect. It was halting, with missed notes and uncertain timing. But it was real and it was shared, and for a few precious minutes, four broken hearts beat in sync with the melody. When the song ended, silence fell again. But it was a different kind of silence, not empty but full of unspoken possibilities. Same time tomorrow? Emma asked, closing the piano lid gently. I could use the practice, and it's more fun with company. Rose's head dipped in what might have been a nod. Lily's response was more guarded. Maybe, if we're not busy. As Sarah helped the girls back to the main house for their morning lessons, she caught sight of Alexander Thorne standing in his study window, watching them. Their eyes met briefly, and she saw something like hope flash across his face before he turned away. That evening, as Emma practiced her piano and Sarah prepared for the next day, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Her heart stopped when she read the message. Saw your name in the society pages. Moving up in the world. Sarah, hope you've been keeping our secrets safe. Would hate for your new friends to learn the truth about you and about Emma's father. Sarah's hands shook as she deleted the message, but she couldn't delete the fear that came with it. She'd known this peace couldn't last forever, but she'd hoped for more time. Time for Emma to find her place here. Time for the twins to learn. To trust again. Time for her own heart to remember what it felt like to belong somewhere. But secrets, like music, had their own rhythm. And sometimes, no matter how carefully you tried to control the tempo, the song played itself out in ways you never expected. The message haunted Sarah through sleepless nights, but the days were too full for dwelling on fears. The twins were, slowly, cautiously, beginning to emerge from their shells. Rose had started responding with small nods or headshakes when asked direct questions, and Lily's outbursts were becoming less frequent, though no less intense when they did occur. It was during one of their physical therapy sessions that Sarah noticed something odd. Rose was working with the therapist, practicing hand exercises, when Sarah caught sight of a small notebook, partially hidden in the girl's lap. The pages were filled with what looked like musical notation, written in a shaky but determined hand. Rose? Sarah kept her voice gentle, non-threatening. Is that music you're writing? Rose's hands stilled. For a moment, Sarah thought she would retreat back into her silence, but then she slowly lifted the notebook, offering it for inspection. The notes were carefully drawn, though some were smudged with what might have been tears. At the top of the page was a title, For Mom. She's been composing again, Lily announced from across the room, her voice a complex mixture of pride and pain. She won't let anyone hear it, though, not even me. Sarah studied the notation, remembering what Alexander had told her about Caroline, being a composer. Your mother taught you both composition. She taught us everything, Lily said, her wheelchair moving closer. She said music was a language everyone could speak, even if their bodies didn't work the way others did. She created special techniques for us, ways to play that worked with our hands. Lily's voice caught, and Sarah saw Rose's fingers tighten on the notebook. Would you tell me about her? Sarah asked carefully. About the music she made with you. The silence that followed was heavy with memory. Then, to everyone's surprise, it was Rose who spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. She made it feel like flying. Lily's head snapped toward her sister, eyes wide. It was the first time Rose had spoken in Sarah's presence. The music? Sarah prompted gently. Rose nodded, her eyes focused on the notebook. When we played together, it was like our wheelchairs disappeared, like we could soar. Rose, Lily's voice cracked. Her wheelchair moved next to her sister's, their shoulders touching. "I miss her so much," Rose whispered, and the dam broke. Both girls began to cry, years of pent-up grief flowing out in gut-wrenching sobs. Sarah signaled the therapist to give them privacy. She knelt between the wheelchairs, offering her hands to both girls. To her surprise, they each took one, holding on like they were drowning and she was their lifeline. "Your mother sounds like an amazing woman," Sarah said softly, "and I see so much of her in both of you. The creativity, the strength, the deep love for music." "Dad can't even look at the piano anymore," Lily managed between sobs. "He stays in his office all the time, just like after the accident," Rose finished, her quiet voice stronger now. "Sometimes I think he wishes it had been us instead of her." "No," Sarah said firmly. "No. Your father loves you both more than anything. He's lost, yes, but not because he wishes things were different. He's lost because he doesn't know how to help you heal when he hasn't healed himself." Both girls looked at her, their tear-stained faces so young and yet so old at the same time. "How do you know?" Lily challenged, though without her usual anger. "How can you be so sure?" Sarah thought of Emma, of all the times she'd questioned her own decisions, wondering if her lies were protecting her daughter or just protecting herself, because that's what happens when parents are hurting. We sometimes make mistakes, hide from the pain, try to bury it in work or silence or false stories, but it doesn't mean we love our children any less. Rose's free hand moved to her notebook. "I wanted to write something that might make him remember the good times, but I'm afraid." "Afraid of what, sweetheart?" "Afraid it won't be good enough. Afraid it will make him sad again. Afraid—" She glanced at her sister. "Afraid to hope." Lily squeezed her sister's hand. "Play it for me first, like we used to do with Mum's new pieces?" Rose hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Tonight? After dinner?" "I'll be there," Lily promised, then looked at Sarah. "You too? And maybe Emma?" Sarah smiled, feeling the weight of the moment. "We'd be honored." That evening, as she helped the girls prepare for their impromptu concert, Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. "Hope you're enjoying playing house with the rich folks. Tick-tock, Sarah. Everything comes out eventually." She deleted the message with trembling fingers, but couldn't shake the growing sense of dread. The past was closing in, threatening this fragile new piece they'd found. She thought of the metal box hidden in her room, of the truths locked away inside it, of the lies she'd told to keep Emma safe. Looking at the twins, their faces alight with nervous excitement as they prepared to share Rose's composition, Sarah made a decision. Tomorrow she would tell Alexander everything, about Emma's father, about the threats, about the danger that might be coming for them all. But tonight was for healing, for music, for two young girls taking their first steps back into the light. Tonight was for remembering that even in the darkest times, beauty could still bloom. As Rose's fingers touched the keys, drawing out the first notes of her tribute to her mother, Sarah sent up a silent prayer that when the truth finally emerged, these fragile bonds they'd built would be strong enough to survive it. The evening's performance transformed the silent music room into a sanctuary of healing. Rose's composition was raw and beautiful, a melody that spoke of loss and love, of memories that refused to fade. Emma sat beside her, turning pages and offering quiet encouragement, while Lily watched with tears streaming down her face, all pretense of toughness forgotten. Alexander Thorne stood in the doorway, drawn by the music he hadn't expected to hear in his home again. His face was a mask of emotion as he watched his daughters share this moment, this piece of their mother's legacy living on through their gift. When the last note faded, silence fell. Not the heavy, oppressive silence that had dominated the house for years, but a gentle quiet filled with possibility. Alexander's voice cracked. He moved into the room, kneeling between his daughters' wheelchairs. "That was beautiful, Rose. Your mother would have been so proud." Rose reached for her father's hand, and for the first time since Sarah had arrived, she saw the man beneath the businessman's facade crumble. He gathered both girls into his arms, their tears mingling as years of unspoken grief and love poured out. Emma caught Sarah's eye, and they quietly slipped from the room, giving the family privacy for their moment of reconnection. As they walked back to the guest house under a star-filled sky, Emma linked her arm through her mother's. "You're doing something amazing here, Mom," she said softly. "They're starting to heal." Sarah's heart clenched at her daughter's words, thinking of the threatening messages, of the decision she'd made to come clean to Alexander. "Emma, there's something we need to talk about." But before she could continue, Victoria appeared on the path, her usual professional composure slightly ruffled. "Sarah, Mr. Thorne would like to see you in his study, immediately." Emma squeezed her mother's arm. "Go, we can talk later." Sarah followed Victoria back to the main house, her mind racing. Had Alexander somehow discovered her secrets already? But when they reached the study, she found him looking more alive than she'd ever seen him, his eyes bright with something like hope. "Sarah, I need to thank you," he began, gesturing for her to sit. "What you've accomplished in these few weeks. I haven't heard Rose play since we lost Caroline. I hadn't seen Lily cry, really cry, not just in anger, since the funeral. You've given them permission to grieve, to remember, to feel. They're remarkable girls," Sarah said carefully. "They just needed someone to see them, to hear them." "No," Alexander shook his head. "They needed someone who understood loss, who could show them how to rebuild." He paused, studying her. "Like you did with Emma." Sarah's throat tightened. This was her moment, her chance to tell him everything before it was too late. "Mr. Thorne, Alexander, there's something I need to tell you." But before she could continue, Victoria burst into the study without knocking, her face pale. "Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's someone at the gate. He's demanding to see Sarah, claiming to be Emma's father." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Sarah's vision blurred at the edges as Alexander turned to her, confusion and concern warring on his face. "I thought you said Emma's father had passed away." "He did. Sarah's voice failed her as the carefully constructed walls of her life began to crumble. Victoria's tablet chimed with an incoming photo from the security gate. She turned it to show them, and Sarah's worst fears materialized on the screen. James Connor, Emma's father, stood at the gate, older but unchanged, the same charming smile that had once won her heart, now twisted with malice. "Sarah?" Alexander's voice was quiet, controlled. "Who is that man?" She forced herself to meet his gaze, knowing that everything, her job, their growing bonds, this safe haven they'd found, was about to shatter. "Emma's father," she whispered. "He's supposed to be in prison. He was arrested for corruption, fraud, embezzlement. I left him when I discovered what he was doing. He threatened us, so I ran. I told Emma he had died to protect her from the truth." Alexander was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he pressed a button on his desk. "Security, do not let that man onto the property under any circumstances. Victoria, call our lawyers, now." Victoria hurried from the room. As Alexander turned back to Sarah, "Tell me everything. No more secrets, no more lies. If I'm going to protect you, all of you, I need to know what we're dealing with." Sarah's hands trembled in her lap as she began to speak, unraveling the web of lies she'd woven over the past 16 years. With each word, she felt the weight of her secrets lifting, even as the fear of their consequences grew heavier. Outside the study windows, the music room lights still glowed warmly, and if she listened carefully, she could hear the faint sound of Rose playing again, Lily's voice joining in with newfound strength. Everything she'd built here, everything they'd healed together, hung in the balance. But as she met Alexander's steady gaze, she saw not judgment, but understanding. Perhaps, she thought, some secrets were meant to be shared, not just for unburdening, but for building stronger foundations of trust. Sarah's confession poured out in a torrent of long-suppressed truths. She told Alexander everything, about meeting James Connor when she was young and idealistic, about discovering his criminal activities, about the threats that forced her to flee with their unborn child. Her hands shook as she opened her purse and removed the newspaper clippings she'd kept all these years. Alexander read them silently, his expression growing darker with each revelation. The articles detailed James's crimes: corporate fraud, money laundering, connections to organized crime. The final piece described his arrest and conviction, but made no mention of Sarah or their unborn child. She'd managed to disappear before. The story broke. "The last time I saw him," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper, "he told me that if I ever testified against him, he'd make sure I regretted it. I was 3 months pregnant with Emma. I changed my name, moved across the country, started over. I told everyone, including Emma, that her father had died in an accident. And now he's found you," Alexander stated, his tone carefully controlled. "Why now, after all these years?" Before Sarah could respond, Victoria returned with a tablet. "Sir, you need to see this." She placed it on the desk, displaying what appeared to be a financial news website. It was published 2 hours ago. The headline made Sarah's blood run cold. "Tech billionaire's new hire raises questions. Who is Sarah Martinez?" "It's already spreading through the social circles," Victoria explained. "Someone recognized you from the charity gala photos last week. They've connected you to James Connor's case." Alexander skimmed the article, his jaw tightening. "They're implying that Sarah's presence in my home is part of some elaborate scheme, that she might be working with Connor." "That's not true." Sarah stood abruptly, panic rising in her throat. "I had no idea he was out. I would never put your family at risk." "I believe you," Alexander said firmly, "but we need to handle this carefully. Victoria, get our PR team on this immediately and double the security, especially around the guest house." "Emma," Sarah breathed, "I need to tell her before she sees this online. She deserves to hear the truth from me." "Go," Alexander nodded. "Victoria will escort you. I'll stay with the girls." But as Sarah turned to leave, Rose's wheelchair appeared in the doorway, Lily right beside her. Their faces showed they'd heard enough to understand something was terribly wrong. "You lied," Lily said, but there was more hurt than accusation in her voice, just like everyone else. "Not about everything," Sarah replied, fighting back tears. "Never about caring for you both. Never about wanting to help you heal." Rose's quiet voice cut through the tension. "Is Emma safe?" The simple question, filled with concern for her new friend, nearly broke Sarah's composure. "I hope so, sweetheart, but I need to go make sure." "We're coming with you," Lily announced, her chin lifted in determination. "Emma's our friend too." Alexander started to protest, but Rose spoke again. "Mom always said we were stronger together, remember?" A look passed between father and daughters, years of shared grief and love condensed into a moment. Finally, he nodded. "Together, then. Victoria, have security sweep the grounds and meet us at the guest house." They moved as a group through the darkened gardens, security personnel emerging from the shadows to surround them. Sarah's heart pounded with each step, wondering how she would tell her daughter that everything she'd believed about her father was a lie. The guest house lights were on, and through the window they could see Emma at the piano, headphones on, completely absorbed in her music. The sight was so normal, so peaceful, that Sarah almost convinced herself they could preserve her innocence for a little longer. But as they approached the door, Emma looked up and saw their faces. She pulled off her headphones, her expression shifting from confusion to concern. "Mom, what's wrong?" Sarah crossed the room and took her daughter's hands. "Honey, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you long ago." Emma's eyes darted between the assembled faces, her mother's anguish, Alexander's grave concern, the twins' mixture of worry and determination. "Is this about Dad? About the accident?" Sarah's voice caught. "There was no accident, Emma. Your father, he's alive, and he's here." The color drained from Emma's face as 16 years of carefully constructed reality began to unravel. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, as if nature itself was responding to the weight of this moment. "I don't understand," Emma whispered, but her voice suggested she was beginning to comprehend all too well. "You told me he died before I was born. You said—" "I lied to protect you," Sarah's words tumbled out. "Your father was involved in criminal activities. When I discovered what he was doing and refused to be part of it, he threatened us. I ran to keep you safe. I gave you a story about a good man who died tragically because I thought it was better than the truth about a bad man who chose crime over his family." Emma pulled her hands away, standing so abruptly the piano bench scraped across the floor. All these years, every time I asked about him, every time I cried on his birthday, every time I told people about the tragic accident that took my father, it was all a lie. Emma, Lily wheeled forward, reaching for her friend's hand. Sometimes parents lie because they love us too much to let us carry their burdens. Rose nodded, adding softly, like when Dad told us Mum wasn't in pain at the end. We knew it wasn't true, but we understood why he said it. Emma looked at the twins, then back at her mother. The hurt in her eyes was devastating, but there was something else there too, a strength Sarah recognized from the mirror, a resilience, passed down from mother to daughter. Tell me everything, Emma said, her voice steadier now. No more lies, no more protection. I need to know who I am, who he is, and what we're going to do now. Thunder crashed closer as Sarah began to speak, telling her daughter the unvarnished truth about James Connor and the choices that had led them to this moment. Outside security teams patrolled the darkness, watching for a man who had already proven he would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. But inside the guest house, surrounded by their unlikely found family, Sarah felt something unexpected beneath. Her fear, hope. Because sometimes the truth, no matter how painful, was the first step toward real healing. Dawn broke over the Thorne estate, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed at odds with the tension hanging in the air. Sarah hadn't slept, spending the night watching Emma finally drift off on the sofa in Alexander's study, the twins nearby in their wheelchairs, refusing to leave their friend alone. Alexander had worked through the night with his security team and lawyers, pulling strings and calling in favors to understand exactly what they were facing. Victoria appeared periodically with updates, each one more concerning than the last. James Connor was released 3 months ago, she reported, her tablet displaying his release documents. He's been monitoring Sarah's movements since then, gathering information. The social media exposure wasn't an accident. He orchestrated it. He's trying to force my hand, Sarah said, her voice hoarse from hours of explaining her past to Emma. He knows I won't run again. Not now that Emma knows the truth. Not now that we've found... She glanced at the sleeping girls. This. Alexander moved to the window, his shoulders tense. He won't get near any of you. I've increased security, and my lawyers are preparing restraining orders. But Sarah, there's something else you should know. He turned to face her. The company Connor was convicted of defrauding. It was a subsidiary of Thorne Enterprises. Sarah felt the floor shift beneath her feet. What? I didn't make the connection until Victoria showed me the full case files. The scandal nearly destroyed that division of the company. We had to lay off hundreds of workers, families lost their saving. It was a dark time. I had no idea, Sarah whispered. Alexander, if I had known the connection, you would have what? Not taken the job? Left the girls without the first person who's truly helped them heal? He shook his head. The past is the past. What matters is how we handle this now. A soft sound made them both turn. Emma was awake, watching them with eyes that seemed older than her 16 years. He's going to keep coming, isn't he? He won't just go away. No, honey. Sarah moved to her daughter's side. He won't. But we're not alone anymore. You've never been alone, a quiet voice added. Rose had woken too, her eyes clear and determined. Mum used to say that music creates bonds stronger than blood. That's what we have now, all of us. Lily stirred in her wheelchair. So we fight, together. Alexander's phone buzzed with a message from the gate security. His face hardened as he read it. He's back, with reporters this time. Sarah's heart clenched, but before she could speak, Emma stood. Good, let them come. Everyone turned to look at her. Emma, Sarah questioned, concerned by the steel in her daughter's voice. For 16 years he's had all the power. He made you run, made you lie, made you live in fear. Emma's voice shook slightly, but her spine was straight. I've spent my whole life mourning a dead hero instead of knowing the truth about a living coward. No more. The twins moved their wheelchairs closer to Emma, a silent show of support. Alexander studied the group for a moment, then pressed the intercom. Victoria, Tell the PR team to prepare a statement and get the reporters into the main conference room." "Sir?" Victoria's surprise was evident even through the speaker. "It's time to change the narrative," he said, looking at Sarah. "If you're willing." Sarah looked at her daughter, seeing not just Emma's strength but also her own reflected back at her. She thought of all the years she'd spent running, hiding, trying to protect Emma from the truth. But maybe true protection wasn't about hiding from darkness. Maybe it was about standing together in the light. "The reporters want a story," Sarah squared her shoulders. "Let's give them one. Not about a woman running from her past, but about two broken families healing together. Not about secrets and lies, but about the courage to face the truth. About the family we choose," Lily added firmly. "And the strength we share," Rose completed softly. Alexander nodded to Victoria. "Have them ready in 30 minutes. And Victoria, make sure the piano in the conference room has been tuned." Emma's eyebrows rose. "The piano?" Rose's hands moved to her notebook, the one containing her composition. "Some stories are better told through music." As they prepared to face the reporters, and through them James Connor, Sarah felt a shift in the air. The fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by something stronger, the certainty that whatever came next, they would face it. Together. Outside, camera crews were setting up their equipment, eager for a scandal. But inside, a different story was taking shape. One of broken people finding wholeness in each other, of truth breaking through years of carefully constructed lies, of music returning to silent rooms, and love blooming in unexpected places. Sarah looked at her daughter, standing tall between the twins' wheelchairs, and realized that sometimes the greatest act of protection wasn't hiding the truth, but facing it head-on, surrounded by those who would stand with you in the storm. The Thorn. Mansion's conference room had never seen a gathering quite like this. Reporters filled the seats, their cameras and microphones ready to capture what they assumed would be a scandalous expose. Instead, they found themselves facing an unexpected tableau. Alexander Thorne, standing protectively beside Sarah Martinez, Emma poised at the grand piano with the twins positioned on either side of her. Victoria had orchestrated the scene perfectly, ensuring the morning light streamed through the tall windows in a way that softened the clinical atmosphere of the conference room. The reporters shifted restlessly, unsure what to make of this carefully composed image. "Thank you all for coming," Alexander began, his voice carrying the authority of a man used to commanding attention. "I understand you're here expecting a story about scandal and deception. You're not entirely wrong. There is a story of deception here, but perhaps not the one you anticipated." Sarah stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. 16 years ago, I made a choice to protect my unborn child from a man who valued power and money over family. I created a story about a tragic accident, believing it was better for my daughter to mourn a hero than know the truth about a criminal." Murmurs rippled through the assembled press. Cameras clicked rapidly, capturing every expression. James Connor, the man claiming to be a wronged father, was convicted of crimes that destroyed lives and families. Alexander continued. "What you don't know, what wasn't reported then, was the full scope of his activities and the threats he made against Sarah and their unborn child when she discovered the truth." Emma's fingers moved to the piano keys, beginning the soft opening notes of Rose's composition. The unexpected music caused the reporters to fall silent, captivated by the gentle melody. "But this isn't just a story about the past," Sarah continued, drawing strength from the music. "It's about how broken pieces can come together to create something new and beautiful. It's about two families who found healing in each other." Rose's wheelchair moved slightly forward. 3 years ago, we lost our mother," she said, her quiet voice carrying clearly in the hushed room. "We lost our music, our joy, our connection to each other. We built walls of silence and anger because it hurt too much to feel anything else. Then Sarah and Emma came," Lily added, her usual defiance tempered with genuine emotion. "They didn't just see our wheelchairs or our pain. They saw us, all of us." The melody from the piano grew stronger, Rose and Lily's hands joining Emma's on the keys. The harmonies they created together filled the room with a tangible sense of hope and healing. A commotion at the back of the room drew everyone's attention. James Connor stood in the doorway, his handsome features twisted with anger. "How touching," he sneered. "My wife and daughter playing happy families with crippled rich kids." Security moved to intercept him, but Alexander held up a hand. "Let him speak. Let everyone see exactly who he is." Emma's hands stilled on the piano as she turned to face the man she'd believed dead for 16 years. "You're not my father," she said, her voice clear and strong. "A father wouldn't have threatened his unborn child. A father wouldn't have forced his family to live in fear. A father wouldn't have chosen crime over love." James took a step forward, his charm slipping further to reveal the darkness beneath. "You don't know anything about it, little girl. Your mother filled your head with lies." "No," Rose interrupted, surprising everyone. "You're the lie. The story about the accident? That was kinder than the truth about you. Sarah protected Emma the same way our dad protected us when he told us Mum wasn't suffering at the end. Sometimes love means carrying the burden of truth alone." The reporters were scribbling frantically now, cameras capturing every moment of this unexpected confrontation. James looked around, suddenly aware that this wasn't going according to his plan. "You think this changes anything?" he snarled. "I still have evidence, documents that could bring down what's left of the subsidiary I supposedly defrauded, documents that could implicate others in this room." Alexander stepped forward, his expression cold. "You mean these documents?" Victoria appeared beside him, holding a familiar-looking flash drive. "The ones you tried to use to blackmail your way back into Sarah's life. The ones that actually prove your own deeper involvement in the crimes you were convicted of." James's face paled. "How did you really think I wouldn't have people watching you from the moment you appeared at my gate?" Alexander's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Did you imagine I wouldn't protect my family, all of my family, from someone like you?" "We're not afraid of you anymore," Sarah said, moving to stand beside Emma. "We're not running, we're not hiding, and we're certainly not letting you destroy another family." The twins moved their wheelchairs forward in perfect synchronization, forming a united front with Sarah and Emma. The sight was powerful. Two broken families merged into something stronger, something unbreakable. James looked around the room, seeing his carefully laid plans crumbling. The reporters weren't capturing a scandal. They were witnessing a story of redemption, of healing, of love triumphing over fear. "Security," Alexander said calmly. "Please escort Mr. Connor out, and make sure he understands that any further attempts to contact or threaten any member of this family will result in immediate legal action." As James was led away, his protests drowned out by the buzz of reporters' questions, Emma turned back to the piano. Her fingers found the keys again, and Rose's composition filled the room once more. But this time the melody was different, stronger, more confident, a song of victory rather than loss. Sarah watched her daughter playing alongside the twins, saw the pride in Alexander's eyes as he watched his girls creating music again, and felt the last weights of her past finally begin to lift. They had faced the darkness together, and in doing so, had found their way into the light. In the days that followed, the story of the Thorne-Martinez families became something different than the scandal the media had hoped for. Instead of exposing secrets and lies, they found themselves reporting on resilience, redemption, and the extraordinary power of chosen family. The guest house stood empty now, its piano silent. Sarah and Emma had moved into the main house at Alexander's insistence, their belongings finding new homes in rooms that no longer felt quite so hollow. The transition wasn't without its challenges, but each day brought new moments of healing and connection. One sunny afternoon, about a week after the press conference, Sarah found herself in Caroline's old music room. The space had been transformed, with the twins' physical therapy equipment sharing space with musical instruments. Rose was at the piano, working on a new composition, while Lily helped Emma arrange her art supplies in a corner they designated as her studio. "Mom?" Emma called out, seeing Sarah in the doorway, Come look at this. Sarah crossed the room to where Emma was setting up her easel. On it was a work in progress, a portrait of the twins at the piano, their faces alive with joy and determination. The painting captured not just their physical appearance, but something deeper, their spirit, their resilience, their growing strength. "It's beautiful," Sarah said, touching the corner of the canvas gently. "You've really captured them." "She's captured all of us," Rose said softly, wheeling over to look at the painting. She pointed to the background where Emma had sketched in two figures watching over the scene. One clearly Sarah, the other Alexander, their protective presence a constant in their children's lives. "I was thinking," Lily added, her wheelchair positioned precisely between the piano and the easel, "maybe we could use this for the benefit concert poster." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Benefit concert?" "Dad approved it this morning," Rose explained, a hint of excitement in her voice. "We're organizing a concert to raise money for arts programs in pediatric hospitals, music therapy, art therapy, the kinds of things that helped us heal." "Emma's doing the artwork," Lily continued, "and Rose is composing a special piece. I'm handling the logistics with Victoria's help." "And you're just now telling me about this?" Sarah asked, though she couldn't keep the smile from her face. "We wanted it to be a surprise," Emma admitted. "Something to show you that we're not just okay, we're thriving." The sound of footsteps drew their attention to the doorway, where Alexander stood watching them with a warmth that had become increasingly common in his expression. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, entering the room. "But there's something I'd like to discuss with all of you." The girls gathered around as Alexander took a seat near the piano. Sarah noticed he was holding what looked like legal documents. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began, "about family and what it means. About how sometimes the families we choose are as important as the ones we're born into." He looked at Sarah, his eyes soft with an emotion she wasn't quite ready to name. "I've had my lawyers draw up papers. If you're willing, Sarah, I'd like to make your position here permanent, not as an employee but as a partner in running this household and helping raise our children." Emma's eyes widened as she caught the implications of his words. The twins exchanged knowing looks, their hands finding each other across the space between their wheelchairs. "Alexander," Sarah began, her heart racing, "are you saying—" "I'm saying that these past weeks have shown me what this house was missing. Not just a caregiver for the girls, but a partner for me. Someone who understands loss and healing, who isn't afraid of the hard work of rebuilding." He smiled. "Someone who already feels like family." Rose's hands moved to the piano keys, playing a soft, hopeful melody. Lily reached for Emma's hand, squeezing it gently. "The girls and I have talked about it," Alexander continued. "They've helped me understand that sometimes the best way to honor the past is to embrace the future. Caroline would have wanted us to be happy, to be whole again." Sarah looked around the room, at Emma's painting capturing their unconventional family, at the twins' eager faces, at Alexander's hopeful eyes. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, about the lies that had somehow led to deeper truths. "Yes," she said simply, feeling tears of joy spring to her eyes. "Yes to all of it." The room erupted in celebration, Emma hugging the twins as best she could with their wheelchairs, Alexander pulling Sarah close, Rose playing a triumphant chord progression that seemed to make the very air sparkle with possibility. Later, that evening, as they all sat together in the garden watching the sunset, Sarah realized that sometimes the happiest endings come not from avoiding life's storms, but from learning to dance in the rain. Their family might not look like others, might not have followed a traditional path, but it was theirs, built on understanding, strengthened by adversity, and bound together by love that transcended blood and circumstance. The twins were playing a duet on the outdoor piano they'd insisted on having installed. Emma was sketching the scene in her ever-present notebook, and Alexander's hand was warm in Sarah's as they watched their children, all their children, creating something beautiful together. This was what healing looked like, Sarah thought. Not the absence of scars, but the transformation of wounds into wisdom. Not the erasure of the past, but the courage to build a future from its lessons. Autumn painted the Thorn estate in brilliant shades of gold and crimson as preparations for the benefit concert reached their final stages. The transformation of the mansion over the past few months was remarkable. Where once silence had reigned, music now floated through every corridor, accompanied by the sound of laughter and the gentle hum of motorized wheelchairs. Emma had converted one of the sunrooms into her art studio, its walls now adorned with portraits of their blended family. Her latest piece captured the twins during their physical therapy sessions, their determination evident in every brushstroke. But it was her series of sketches showing Rose and Lily at the piano that had become the centerpiece of the benefit concert's promotional materials. "The registrations are beyond our expectations," Victoria announced during their morning meeting. "We've had to move the concert to the city's Performing Arts Center to accommodate everyone." Rose looked up from her sheet music, her eyes wide. "How many people?" "Over 1,000, Victoria replied, unable to suppress a smile. "Your mother's story, combined with your musical comeback and Emma's artwork, has touched a lot of hearts. Several major children's hospitals have reached out about implementing similar arts therapy programs." Lily wheeled closer to her sister, their shoulders touching in a gesture that had become their way of sharing strength. "Are you sure we can do this, Rose? Performing in front of so many people?" "You can," Sarah said firmly, entering the room with a tray of hot chocolate, a tradition she'd started during their evening practice sessions. "You've been preparing for months, and your piece is beautiful." "But Mum was always the performer," Rose said softly. "We just played for fun. Caroline would be so proud of you both," Alexander added, joining them from his study. "Not just for the music, but for using your talents to help other children heal." Emma looked up from her sketchbook, where she was putting the finishing touches on the concert program design. "Maybe we could incorporate some of your mum's compositions too, make it a tribute to her legacy." The twins exchanged a look that spoke volumes, the special twin communication that had only grown stronger since they'd started opening up to their new family. "Actually," Rose began hesitantly, "we've been working on something special." Lily nodded encouragingly, and Rose wheeled over to a drawer in the music room cabinet. She withdrew a folder that looked well worn, its edges soft with age. "We found Mom's old composition notebooks," Lily explained, "the ones she used when she was creating pieces for us to play with our different abilities." "She had this whole system," Rose continued, opening the folder to reveal pages of musical notation interspersed with handwritten notes. "Ways to adapt classical pieces for people with limited mobility, techniques for making complex music accessible to everyone." Alexander moved closer, his hand trembling slightly as he touched the familiar handwriting. "Caroline always said music should be for everyone. She believed in breaking down barriers and finding new ways to express the inexpressible. So we've been studying her notes," Lily said, her voice growing stronger, "working with our physical therapist to understand the biomechanics, with our music teacher to adapt the techniques. And we've created something new," Rose finished, "a piece that combines Mom's methods with our own experiences, something that could help other children like us find their way back to music." Sarah felt tears welling up as she watched the twins share their secret project. This was so far beyond what she'd hoped for when she'd first accepted the position as their caregiver, not just helping them heal, but watching them transform their pain into purpose. "It's more than just a concert piece," Emma realized, moving to sit between the twins' wheelchairs. "It's a whole program, isn't it? A way to teach other kids that physical limitations don't have to limit their ability to create beauty." Alexander knelt beside his daughters, taking in the detailed notes they'd made, the careful adaptations of their mother's work. "Your mother always dreamed of developing a comprehensive music therapy program. She would be amazed to see you carrying her vision forward." "We thought," Lily said, glancing at Sarah, "maybe this could be part of the Family Foundation's new initiative, the one you and Dad have been discussing." Sarah exchanged a warm look with Alexander. They'd been quietly planning to expand the Thorn Foundation's focus to include arts therapy and accessibility programs, but hadn't yet shared the details with the children. I think that's a wonderful idea, Sarah replied. In fact, I've been in touch with some of my old colleagues from the pediatric ward. They're very interested in piloting new therapy programs that combine medical care with artistic expression. And I've been talking to the board about establishing a Caroline Thorne Memorial Fellowship, Alexander added, to fund research and development in adaptive music education. Rose's fingers traced her mother's handwriting on the aged pages. So she'll still be helping children even now through us. Through all of us, Emma corrected gently. Family legacies don't have to be about blood. They're about carrying forward the things that matter, about turning love into action. Victoria cleared her throat, clearly moved but trying to maintain her professional composure. I hate to interrupt, but we should discuss the logistics for next week's dress rehearsal. As Victoria began reviewing schedules and arrangements, Sarah watched the scene before her with a full heart. The twins were eagerly showing Emma more of their mother's notes, their excitement evident in their animated gestures and overlapping explanations. Alexander had moved to the piano, softly playing one of Caroline's compositions, his eyes closed in remembrance, but his expression peaceful. This was what healing looked like, not the absence of pain, but its transformation into purpose. Not the erasure of the past, but its integration into a new and hopeful future. They were building something extraordinary together, turning their individual stories of loss and redemption into a symphony of possibility for others. The Performing Arts Center buzzed with anticipation on the evening of the benefit concert. Backstage, the nervous energy was palpable as final preparations were made. Rose and Lily sat in their wheelchairs near the grand piano, running through their piece one last time, while Emma made minor adjustments to their performance attire. Elegant dresses in complementary shades of blue that she had designed herself. "Everything ready?" Sarah asked, entering the green room with Alexander. She carried a small velvet box, while he held what looked like an old photograph. The twins paused their practice, turning to face their parents. The word still felt new, wonderful, and slightly strange, even though Sarah and Alexander's wedding 2 weeks ago had made it official. It had been a small, intimate ceremony in the mansion's garden, with Emma walking Sarah down the aisle while the twins played a duet they'd composed for the occasion. "We have something for you," Alexander said, kneeling between his daughter's wheelchairs. "Two things, actually. The first is this." He handed Rose the photograph. The image showed a much younger Caroline seated at a piano, her pregnant belly visible beneath a flowing dress. She was laughing at something off camera, her hands poised over the keys, her face radiating joy. "This was taken the day she finished composing your lullaby," Alexander explained softly. "The piece she wrote while carrying you both, the one she played every night until the accident," Lily finished, her voice thick with emotion. "We remember." Sarah stepped forward, opening the velvet box to reveal 2 delicate silver necklaces, each bearing a treble clef pendant. "These were your mother's. Alexander found them in her jewelry box. We thought you might like to wear them tonight." Rose touched the pendants gently. "They're beautiful." "Mom wore these when she performed," Lily remembered. "She said they helped her feel connected to the music." As Sarah helped fasten the necklaces around the twins' necks, Emma emerged from the dressing room in a gown that matched the family's color scheme. She carried her portfolio, which contained the original artwork that would be auctioned during the intermission to raise additional funds for the foundation. "The house is almost full," she reported. "And guess who I just saw in the audience? Dr. Torres from the Children's Hospital, with some of her patients there sitting in the special section we reserved." The twins' eyes lit up. They'd been working with Dr. Torres to develop the pilot program for their mother's adaptive music techniques, spending hours with young patients who faced similar physical challenges. "Are you nervous?" Emma asked, adjusting Rose's necklace, so it caught the light perfectly. "A little," Rose admitted. "But Mom always said that butterflies in your stomach just meant your heart was taking flight." "Speaking of flight," Alexander interjected, "there's something else we wanted to discuss with you all." He looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. "How would you feel about postponing our summer vacation plans?" The children exchanged confused looks, The foundation has received requests from children's hospitals across the country, Sarah explained. They want to learn more about the program you've developed. We thought instead of a traditional vacation, we might take the show on the road, so to speak. Give workshops, share your mother's methods, help other families find their way back to music. Like a concert tour. Lily's eyes widened. More like a mission of healing, Alexander said. Combining performances with teaching, sharing not just the music, but the story behind it. Your story. Our story. Emma sat between the twins, her sketchbook open to designs for future workshop materials. We could document everything, create a real curriculum with music and art therapy combined. Make it accessible to everyone regardless of their physical capabilities. What do you think? Sarah asked, watching their faces carefully. It would mean a lot of travel, a lot of public speaking. If it's too much, it's perfect, Rose interrupted, her voice stronger than they'd ever heard it. Mum always said that music was meant to be shared, that healing happened in harmony with others. And we won't be alone, Lily added, reaching for Emma's hand. We'll be together, all of us. A stagehand appeared at the door. 5 minutes to places, everyone. As they made their final preparations, Sarah watched her family with pride. Emma was making last-minute adjustments to the twins' hair while discussing workshop ideas. Alexander was reviewing the program, his free hand resting gently on Rose's shoulder. The love in the room was almost tangible, weaving them together in ways that went beyond blood or marriage. Sarah, Rose called softly, would you and Dad stand in the wings while we perform, where we can see you? Always, Sarah promised, her heart full. We'll always be there, watching over you all. As the lights dimmed and the announcement was made, as the twins wheeled onto the stage to thunderous applause, as Emma took her place at the easel where she would create art inspired by their performance, Sarah felt the truth of those words deep in her soul. They had all been broken in their own ways, by loss, by lies, by limitations, but in finding each other, in choosing to become family, they had discovered something profound, that love, like music, knew no boundaries, that healing, like art, could take many forms, that family, in its truest sense, was about the harmony you created together. The first notes of Rose's composition filled the hall and Sarah reached for Alexander's hand. Together they watched their children shine, knowing that this wasn't an ending but a beginning, the start of a new movement in their ongoing symphony of love and healing. 1 year after the benefit concert, the Thorne Family Foundation's adaptive music program had grown beyond anyone's expectations. The mansion's guest house had been converted into a state-of-the-art teaching facility where children with various physical challenges came to learn music using the methods Caroline had pioneered and her daughters had perfected. On this particular morning, Sarah stood in the doorway of the teaching studio, watching as Rose guided a young girl's hands over the specially adapted keyboard. The child couldn't have been more than 7, her small wheelchair positioned perfectly thanks to Lily's precise measurements and specifications. That's it, Maya, Rose encouraged softly. Let the music flow through your fingers. Don't worry about being perfect, just feel the rhythm. Lily wheeled around the piano, making small adjustments to the pedal extensions they'd designed. Try it now, she suggested. The height should be better. Maya's face lit up as she managed to create a clear sequence of notes. The smile she gave the twins was radiant, reminding Sarah of similar breakthroughs she'd witnessed over the past year. Emma sat nearby at her easel, capturing the scene in quick, confident strokes. Her art therapy program had become an integral part of their work, helping children express through color and form what they couldn't always say in words. Beautiful work, Maya, Emma commented, turning her sketch to show the girl. See how your hands look like butterflies dancing over the keys. That's exactly how the music feels. Sarah felt Alexander's presence before she saw him, his hand settling gently on her shoulder as they watched their children work. The board was impressed with the quarterly results, he murmured. The program has helped over 300 children in just this facility alone. And the satellite programs? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. She'd just returned. from visiting their newest center in Chicago. All exceeding expectations, the waiting lists keep growing. He smiled, watching as Maya's mother wiped tears from her eyes, while her daughter played a simple but clear melody. "We'll need to expand again soon." The sound of wheels on hardwood made them turn. Victoria approached with her tablet, her formerly pristine professional appearance now softened by a hint of paint on her sleeve, evidence of her increasing involvement in the art therapy sessions. "The film crew will be here at 2, she reminded them. "The documentary team wants to capture some of the teaching sessions and interview the family about how it all started." Sarah nodded, remembering how reluctant they'd been initially about sharing their story. But they'd come to understand that their journey from brokenness to healing could offer hope to others facing similar challenges. The lesson with Maya ended with applause from everyone present. As the girl's mother helped her wheel toward the door, she stopped in front of Sarah and Alexander. "I never thought," she began, her voice catching. "The doctors told us after the accident that Maya would never be able to play music again. But now—" She gestured to where Maya was showing Lily her practice notebook, her enthusiasm evident in her animated gestures. "Music finds a way," Rose said softly, joining them. "That's what our mom always said. We just have to be willing to look for new paths." After Maya and her mother left, the family gathered in what had become their planning room. The walls were covered with Emma's conceptual drawings for future projects, interspersed with musical scores adapted by the twins and architectural plans for new teaching facilities. "I've been thinking," Lily announced, wheeling to the center of the room, "about what Mom wrote in her last notebook, about making music accessible to everyone." Rose nodded, already following her sister's train of thought. "The digital adaptation program?" "Exactly." Lily spun to face Alexander. "Dad, what if we could take what we've learned here, all the adaptive techniques, the modified instruments, the therapy combinations, and create a software platform, something that could reach children who can't travel to our centers?" Emma was already sketching, her pencil flying across paper. "We could create a virtual teaching environment, interactive lessons, visual aids, real-time feedback, and personalized adaptations based on each child's specific needs," Rose added. "Like how we adjust the piano settings differently for each student." Alexander exchanged a look with Sarah, both of them recognizing the spark of innovation that had first drawn them together. "I'll have the tech department look into development possibilities," he said. "But this would be your project, all of you." "A true family enterprise," Sarah smiled, watching as their children, and how wonderful it still felt to think of them that way, began brainstorming ideas. Victoria made notes on her tablet, occasionally offering practical suggestions about implementation and timeframes. She'd become much more than an assistant over the past year, her organizational skills and growing passion for their mission making her an invaluable part of their extended family. As the afternoon light filled the room, Sarah found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. From a desperate mother protecting her child with necessary lies, to a caregiver hoping to help two grieving girls, to part of something larger and more meaningful than she could have imagined. The documentary crew would want to know how it all began, what sparked the transformation from a broken family to this vibrant, purposeful community. But how could they explain that sometimes the deepest wounds lead to the most profound healing? That sometimes the families we choose, the bonds we forge through shared pain and shared joy, are the strongest of all? Emma's voice broke through her reverie. "Mom, we need your medical expertise on this part." Sarah joined, her children at the planning table, her heart full as she watched them work together. Rose's quiet wisdom, Lily's fierce determination, Emma's creative vision, all blending into something greater than the sum of its parts. This was their legacy now, not just to Caroline's memory, but to all the families still searching for their own paths to healing. They had taken their broken pieces and built not just a bridge back to joy, but a road forward for others to follow. The documentary premiere was held in the same Performing Arts Center where they'd hosted their first benefit concert. Now 2 years after that transformative night, the family sat in the front row, watching their story unfold on the giant screen. The film opened with Emma's artwork, a a series of portraits showing the evolution of their family. The first showed Sarah and Emma in their old apartment, their faces both hopeful and guarded. Then came the twins in their wheelchairs, their initial anger and withdrawal captured with sensitive understanding. Alexander appeared in the next piece, standing apart from his daughters, grief creating a visible barrier between them. But as the portraits progressed, the changes became evident. The barriers dissolved, the spaces between figures filled with warmth and connection. The final portrait showed them all together in the music room, joy radiating from every brushstroke. Rose's composition provided the soundtrack, her music weaving through the documentary like a golden thread. The audience watched in rapt attention as their story unfolded, not just the public version they'd shared at the press conference, but the deeper truth about healing, about choosing love over fear, about building family from the broken pieces of the past. The film showed their programs in action, children discovering music through adapted instruments, parents crying as they watched their children perform, medical professionals incorporating art and music therapy into traditional treatments. But more than that, it showed the quiet moments. Family dinners filled with laughter, late-night practice sessions, Emma teaching the twins new art techniques, Alexander and Sarah dancing in the garden while their children played. As the credits rolled, the applause was thunderous. Sarah felt Emma squeeze her hand on one side, while Lily reached for her other hand from her wheelchair. Rose was already moving toward the stage. There would be a live performance after the screening, a tradition they'd established at all their major events. "Ready?" Alexander asked, helping Lily position her wheelchair next to her sister's at the grand piano. The twins nodded, their mother's necklaces catching the stage lights. Emma moved to her easel, set up where the audience could watch her create art inspired by her sister's music. Sarah and Alexander took their usual places in the wings, their presence a constant anchor for their children. But before the performance could begin, a small figure in a wheelchair made her way down the aisle. It was Maya, the young girl from their first satellite program, now one of their most dedicated students. "Miss Rose, Miss Lily." Maya's voice carried clearly in the hushed theatre. "I wrote something. For tonight. Could I play it with you?" The twins exchanged glances, then smiled. "Of course," Rose said warmly. "Music is meant to be shared." As Maya wheeled herself onto the stage, other children from their programs began moving forward, some in wheelchairs, some with other adaptive devices, all carrying instruments modified to meet their needs. It hadn't been planned, but it felt perfectly right. The performance that followed was unlike anything the audience had ever seen. The twins began with Rose's original composition, but then seamlessly integrated Maya's piece. One by one, students joined in, each adding their own voice to the growing symphony. Emma's hands flew across her canvas, capturing the magical moment in sweeping strokes of color. Sarah felt tears on her cheeks as she watched their family's mission multiply before her eyes. Each child on that stage represented a life touched, a family given new hope, a future brightened by the power of art and music. Victoria appeared beside them, her professional demeanor softened by evident emotion. "The satellite centers are live streaming this," she whispered. "Children in our programs across the country are watching and playing along." Alexander wrapped his arm around Sarah's waist as they watched their dream expand beyond anything they could have imagined. "Caroline would have loved this," he said softly. "She's here," Sarah replied, touching the pendant she wore, a matching one to the twins given to her on their wedding day. In every note, every smile, every moment of healing, she's here in the legacy these children are building together. The music swelled to a crescendo, all the individual pieces blending into a harmony that filled the theatre with hope. On stage, Rose and Lily played with confident joy, their wheelchairs no longer barriers but pedestals from which they shared their gift with the world. Emma's painting took shape, a visual representation of the music, showing not just the performers but the golden threads of healing that connected them all. In her art, the audience could see what the music made them feel, that limitations were not endings but beginnings, that differences were not divisions but opportunities for new forms of beauty. As the final notes faded, as the audience rose, in a standing ovation, as children and parents embraced with tears of joy, Sarah looked at her family and saw their future unfolding with crystal clarity. They would continue to grow, to heal, to help others find their way back to joy, because that was what families did. Not just the ones we're born into, but the ones we choose, the ones we build from love and understanding, the ones we create from the very challenges that once threatened to break us. 5 years after Sarah first walked through the gates of the Thorne mansion, she stood in the garden watching Emma adjust her graduation cap. The ceremony would begin in a few hours at the local university, where Emma had completed her degree in art therapy while helping develop programs for the foundation. The garden had changed over the years, much like their family. The roses still bloomed, but now they shared space with a variety of accessible planters designed by Lily, allowing children in wheelchairs to experience the joy of gardening. A winding path led to an outdoor amphitheater where they held summer concerts, its design incorporating everything they'd learned about creating truly inclusive spaces. "Mom," Emma's voice pulled Sarah from her reverie. "Do you think Dad can help with this tassel? It keeps slipping." The word Dad still brought a warm glow to Sarah's heart. Alexander had legally adopted Emma 2 years ago, though in truth he'd been her father in every way that mattered long before the paperwork was signed. "Let me help," Rose called, wheeling down the garden path. At 15, she had grown into a poised young woman, her quiet strength now tempered with genuine joy. She guided her wheelchair with one hand while carrying a small wrapped package in her lap. "Is that what I think it is?" Emma asked, kneeling beside Rose's wheelchair. "Open it." Lily appeared from around a corner of the path, her own wheelchair moving with the precision that had become her trademark. "We wanted you to have it before the ceremony." Emma carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a leather-bound portfolio. Inside were drawings she'd made over the years, her first sketches of the twins at the piano, preliminary designs for their adaptive instruments, portraits of children from their programs. But interspersed with her artwork were handwritten musical scores, notes in Caroline's handwriting, and photographs documenting their family's journey. "We found Mom's old journals," Rose explained softly. "The ones where she wrote about her dreams for making music accessible to everyone. Look at the last page." Emma turned to the final sheet and gasped. It was a new piece of music composed by the twins titled Sister's Heart. Below the title was an inscription, "For Emma, who taught us that family is drawn with love, not blood." "We thought you could play it at the graduation party," Lily said, trying to sound casual though her eyes shone with emotion. "Since you're finally letting us perform one of your piano pieces in public." Sarah watched as her daughters, all 3 of them, shared a moment of profound connection. Emma had kept her own musical compositions private for years, playing only for family, but she'd finally agreed to perform at the party they were hosting after the graduation ceremony, where families from all their programs would gather to celebrate. "There's more," Rose added, reaching into her wheelchair's side compartment. She pulled out an official-looking letter bearing the foundation's letterhead. "The board approved it this morning." Emma opened the letter and began to read, her eyes widening. "The Emma Thorne Art Therapy Wing. They're naming the new children's center after me." "It was Dad's idea," Lily explained, "since you're the one who developed most of the integrated therapy techniques we use." "Speaking of Dad," Sarah interjected, hearing familiar footsteps on the garden path, "I think he's here to escort our graduate to the car." Alexander appeared, looking distinguished in his suit, but with joy radiating from his face. Behind him, Victoria managed to maintain her professional demeanor despite the emotional significance of the day. She'd become family too in her own way, her dedication to their mission extending far beyond her official duties. "The cars are ready," Victoria announced, "and everything is prepared for the party afterward. The satellite centers are set up for live streaming, and the children have prepared a special virtual performance." As they made their way to the waiting vehicles, Sarah caught sight of a familiar figure standing near the gates. Maya, now 12, had arrived early with her mother to help set up for the party. She was showing a newer student how to adjust their wheelchair's music stand, passing along the knowledge that had changed her own life years ago. The sight crystallized something Sarah had been feeling all morning. Their family's story had become so much bigger than themselves. What had started as a desperate mother's attempt to protect her child, as a grieving father's hope of helping his daughters heal, had grown into a movement that was changing lives across the country. Emma paused at the garden gate, looking back, at the mansion that had become so much more than a home. "Do you ever think about that first day," she asked Sarah, "when we stood outside these gates, not knowing what waited for us?" Sarah wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders, watching as Alexander helped the twins into their specially adapted van. "I was so afraid then," she admitted, "afraid of being discovered, afraid of letting people in, afraid of breaking the protective bubble I'd built around us. And now I understand that sometimes the things we're most afraid of lead us exactly where we need to be." Sarah smiled as Lily called out for them to hurry or they'd be late. "That sometimes the biggest risks bring the greatest rewards. Like trusting people enough to let them become family." Emma's eyes twinkled. "Like letting love heal what fear had broken," Sarah agreed, guiding her daughter toward the car where their family waited. As they drove toward the university, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought them here. She thought about Caroline, whose legacy lived on not just in her daughter's music, but in every child who discovered joy through their programs. She thought about the lies that had started their story and the truths that had transformed them all. But mostly, she thought about love, the kind that built bridges across differences, that turned strangers into family,